Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with you today. We're really going to dig in on a finite topic. How do you define success with a franchise whose motto is just win, baby? And that's a great motto if it's something that the franchise delivers and adheres to. Now, over the last 20 years, this franchise has not delivered that. And so when I talk about success or I talk about like I did yesterday, I want to read you a couple of emails I got about yesterday's podcast. And if you didn't read yesterday's podcast, I mean, watch it. I really encourage you to go back. But the first one comes to us from Aaron T. Aaron T said, Hondo, I appreciated today's podcast, a word of caution to the Raider Nation. But what I don't think you understand is our frustration is with the franchise. I totally get that, Aaron. And again, I'm only going to read three. The next one comes from some David Ellie. David Ellie. David said, Hondo, today's podcast was outstanding. I'm sorry, we are an angry fan base. Are we wrong to be angry? Great one there. And the last one comes to us from John T. John T said, Hondo, I couldn't help but almost fought tears during your podcast today, reminding us of what we are in our nature, going back to Al Davis, but then also realizing who we are today, which is not what we used to be. How do we balance it? Now, again, I got a ton of email, not just these three, but these three really encapsulated what everybody believes and what everybody is talking about. That's why I wanted to come back and address this issue with you about, and really the title of today's thing is defining success with a just win baby Raiders franchise. So I want to go back over the last 20 years. And I'm not a person that lives life in a rearview mirror, but you can't know where you're going till you know where you've been. And this was a franchise defined by toughness, winning, and everything else. But over the last 20 years, it has not been. And I'm going to say something that is going to appear to be sacrilegious. Okay. But I'm not a fan. I hear a lot of people taking shots at Mark Davis because of the last 20 years. And he is the owner, he is the boss. I'm okay with that. I don't think it's fair, but I'm okay with it because everything you've heard me say rises and falls on leadership. And Al Davis deserves the biggest chunk of responsibility for the last 20 years. And you may say, how can that be? He hasn't even been here for so much of it. Agreed. Agreed. But he knew the succession plan. He knew that Mark was going to take over the team. And I do not believe he effectively prepared Mark for that. So Mark has been essentially learning on the job. And you know what? Look at the contract he gave Gruden. He went out and spent the big bucks for Josh McDaniels. Proved to be the wrong decision, but it hasn't been because Mark's been unwilling to spend the money. It's had nothing to do with money. Mark was willing to spend whatever the people told him he needed to spend to get there. You want to judge Mark by the last 20 years? I'm good with that. But then you need to judge him fairly. His father, for all of the great genius of a football man he was, didn't prepare Mark to succeed him. So Mark could have just said, you know what, franchise is worth a lot of money. I'm going to Vegas. Boy, the casinos will buy a lot of seats. I don't really care. I'm going to be one of the cheapest spending teams. Roll in the cash. No, he's selling chunks of it to bring in guys who are going to help the franchise think bigger. Look at Tom Brady. He is willing to spend the big jack to bring in guys. Now you look, the biggest free agent deals haven't panned out for the Raiders. The small to medium ones have panned out really well, but the big money ones haven't. But he's willing to spend it. And I think because of the reverence people have for Al, myself included, Al Davis is not an NFL icon. He's bigger than that. He's an American icon. He changed professional sports all over the world. Go watch yesterday's podcast if you did. But just because you revere somebody doesn't mean you can't point out failures. My dad is other than Jesus Christ himself, my father was the greatest man to walk this planet. And I can tell you what his faults were. He didn't hide them from me. He didn't try to be something he wasn't. It wasn't who he was. And so you can point out people, hey, they should have been better there. This should have been different. And that doesn't mean you're attacking the person, doesn't mean you're destroying a legacy. That's not what we're doing. Al Davis is an American icon, a football icon, a genius who was not good at training his son to be his successor. Guess what? There's a lot worse faults he could have had. But it's the reality. And so when you look at it through that premise, and then you look at what Mark has done, he's not set back on his blessed assurance saying, I'm just going to roll in the cash. There used to be a cartoon, and I don't remember what it was, but I think it was Donald Duck's grandpa or something. And he was this rich duck who lived in this house, and it was just basically bathed in cash. Mark could be doing that right now. He didn't have to sell one bit of his team. The money's rolling in because of the tremendous business deal that he made. That's another one. Mark Davis isn't half of the football man his dad was, but let's be real. Al Davis wasn't 25% of the businessman Mark Davis is. But no, Mark's out there and he's spending the cash. He's looking for answers. Effort is everything with me. You fail, all right, but what was your effort? There is not what you can point to several mistakes that Mark Davis has made over the years. And Mark would point them out to you. But you can never question Mark Davis's heart, and you can never question his effort. And I'm going to tell you something. I think fans have been unfair to him based on the qualifications that I've just shared with you in this podcast. I think they've been, I think they've been unfair. But I also think, what Mark would say? Yeah, maybe, but who cares? If I win, shuts everybody up. If I don't win, they just go and get louder. I love his mentality. He isn't pouting. Let's just keep winning. Let's just keep swinging until we hit the pitch. Just keep swinging. When I was a little kid and playing Little League Baseball at Bates Scout Park in Langsburg, Michigan, we had a kid on our team that did not have a dad. And his mom signed him up for baseball because she wanted him to do something around boys and men. I have never seen somebody as uncoordinated when it came to sports as this young man. It was brutal. And kids were really tough on him, as you can imagine how kids are. And I'll never forget one day, our coach walked up and our coach said to him, buddy, here's what I want you to do. You just stand there and take every pitch. So until I tell you differently, I want you to swing every time because eventually you're going to hit the ball. And we got to like our second or third game from the last game of the season, and he finally hit a ball. Popped it out to the pitcher. And then later on that same game, he hit one and went foul. And he was so excited it went foul, and he took off running. And they're like, no, you got to go back. But I hit it. Just go back. Didn't hit another one. The next game, he hits nothing. The last game of the year, man, he's swinging at everything. He was 3-0. And his second to last bat, he hits a ball. A guy commits an error, and he gets on first base. he was so excited. And I'll never forget after the game, the coach just reminded us, we're all a bunch of kids, fourth grade boys. And the coach says, "Hey, boys, remember something in life. Just keep swinging. Eventually, you're going to get a hit." Okay. That's Mark Davis. Now he's swinging smart. He's surrounded himself with people. And this is the thing I really like about Mark. He doesn't just want you to come in and do it. He wants you to come in and teach him. And Mark is super smart. And I will never betray Mark Davis. Anything him and I have ever talked about privately, I'll never share. Um, I'm not afraid to criticize him, but I'll never betray him. Mark Davis gets this rap because people don't like his haircut. Who gives a crap about his haircut? Who cares? And or they think, oh, Richie Rich, born with a rich dad, given a franchise. That is so ignorant. Mark is smart. And you know what? He's smart enough to tell you when he doesn't know something. That's real intelligence. So he's asking questions. I've heard him mocked because he talks to his coaches after games. He asks questions. He's a freaking owner. Of course he's going to ask. Hey, why'd we do this? Okay, makes sense. One of the coaches that used to work for the Raiders told me I never once had a problem with Mark Davis's questions. I thought they were all good questions. And the guy has nothing to gain. It was anonymous. He had nothing to gain. He said there were times Mark was really mad and I explained something to him. All right. All right. He was cool with it. Didn't like that we lost, but he was cool with it because I had a reason. And he said to me one time, you know what? He got really mad at me. He didn't like my reason. And he should have been mad. It was a dumb reason. And people, for whatever reason, just think, no, that's not true. And he is surrounding himself with top people. He's paying people. He's got the best headquarters and practice facilities in the NFL. Ain't nobody got it better. I hate to use terms by Jim Harbaugh, even though I respect him, but I'm a Spartan. He's a Wolverine. But Jim Harbaugh and his family, ain't anybody got it better than us? Yeah, the Raiders do. Sorry, Jimmy, but the Raiders got it better than you and John, and a better stadium than you and John. Facts. And he's put the team financially in this great position to succeed. Tom Brady may end up being a terrible owner. We've seen other professional athletes be terrible owners, Michael Jordan. And I really think Jordan and him are the only two comparable. Jordan was a terrible owner. So he may end up being a terrible owner. Let's assume for 1 second that he does. I don't think he will, but let's assume for 1 second that he does. Okay. Can you blame Mark Davis for wanting him to be part of your franchise? Can you? Can you blame Mark Davis for wanting to add the greatest football player of all time, which he is, the GOAT, to your franchise? Can you blame him for bringing in a Pete Carroll, a Hall of Famer? Okay. I think the Ben Johnson hire would have been a mistake. I think the Raiders swerved a curveball there and hit a home run with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was not a good hire. Pete Carroll was a genius hire. And by the way, let's just make this real clear. They wanted Ben Johnson first and then Pete Carroll. Leave it there. Okay. And I think their first choice was the wrong choice. I would not have hired. I would have hired Ben Johnson if I'm Carolina or I'm Jacksonville or I'm not a legacy team. You went and got Pete Carroll. And now you finally get this franchise going in the right direction. So let's address, how do you define success on a Raiders franchise whose motto is just win, baby? And we're looking strictly at 2025. I've had Raider fans say to me, anything less than a Super Bowl is a failure for the Raiders. Okay, that's fine. You're entitled to that opinion. I think you are nutso, but fine. Fine. You're entitled to it. You may say playoffs or it's not successful season. We're talking about 2025. Fine. You're entitled to that opinion. I don't think that's a fair representation, and I'll tell you why. Sometimes you're going to, if this team goes 8-9 and makes the playoffs, I'm not convinced that's a successful season. This team could go 10-7 and miss the playoffs, and I think that is a highly successful season. Because the playoffs is a moving target, I don't know that in 2025 that's a germane goal. You may say win the AFC West. Okay, you're allowed to say that. I think it's a little more sensible than Super Bowl, but not much. In this division, I don't think they have the depth to get there. I just don't think they have the depth. I think there's a ton of really talented young players on this team. I don't think it's a done roster. I think there are still holes on this roster. I think there are some young players who could step up and fill holes. I still think they are a few players away, in the development of some players away from being a Super Bowl contender. So if your expectation is Super Bowl without Super Bowl talent, that's fine. But Dexter's 2 years old, and I don't get mad at him that he doesn't know trigonometry. I do get mad at him if I tell him to pick up his toys and he doesn't. But his brother Shane, who's a junior in college, knows trigonometry. But those are different expectations. I think you have to blend realism and you have to live in reality. Here is the thing. I could see this Raider team, I could see a plausible scenario that they get to 10 wins. I don't think it's probable. And I could see with key injuries them getting to 7 wins. So let me explain. Let's say that they are absolutely decimated by injuries again this year. I could see where you make a statement 8 wins was successful. Depending on the injuries, maybe 7. But I think this is, if you're being fair with the roster they have and the depth they have, which takes into account there'll be some injuries. Not talking about no injuries, because that's not Realville. Remember, I live in Realville. When I'm not a fan, when you're a fan, it stands for fanatic. You don't have to live in Realville. I do. My wife, this is no joke, came to me the other day and said to me, "Hey, I found a Airbnb and for us to book." I said, "For what?" And she said, "Well, for the Super Bowl." I said, "Shannon, Raiders aren't going to the Super Bowl." "Oh yeah, we really are, Hondo." And she starts telling me all the reasons that every one of you believes that, or many of you. You know what? I'd rather live with a lady who's the glass is half full than half empty. And I said, "Well, we're not putting money down to reserve an Airbnb. I'll just, if they go, sweetie, I will bite the bullet and pay the extra money." She's like, "All right. All right." But the reality is, I have to live in Realville. And Realville says there's still a few people short. And they're very young and they don't have a lot of depth. So let's say this team gets to 9 wins, which is what I predicted. I think that's a very successful win. You won more than you lost, so you just won. And in 2025, getting to 9-8 is just winning. I don't think it's unrealistic for those kind of expectations with this team. But how do you define it? I think you have to define it within the realistic elements of what you're dealing with and what you have. That's the key. Because here's the deal. When you approach it with, okay, you know what? This isn't a Super Bowl year. I want to see progress. I want to watch DJ Glaze and Delmar the Mule continue to establish himself. I want to watch JPJ. Man, I want to see Jack Bech and Dante Thornton. I want to watch Trey Tucker take another step. I want Michael Mayer to really come into his own. I want to watch Brock Bowers find a way to get better if he can. I want to watch Amari Gainer step up. I want to see Jacorian stay healthy. Isaiah Palomao, who's gone from a guy who earned that second contract to now start inching towards Pro Bowler. I want to watch Tyree Wilson now. At the end of the year, we're not talking about 7 missed sacks. See where I'm going here? Because when you set unrealistic expectations, you set yourself up to fail. I'm not going to sit here and justify ever sub 500 play from the Raiders. You are a legacy team. Okay. But they lose 9 defensive starters, 7 offensive starters, including Geno and Max and whatever. And they win 7. I could see a scenario where you say, no, it was not an acceptable year, but there was improvement. I could make that argument for 8. But you're sitting here at 9 wins after the year, and you're like, you know what? That was a good year. They got better. They got better. And see, when you say just win, if you were to say, okay, all I want for dinner is a fresh Italian ravioli dinner. Okay, that's great. Then you got to go talk about making it and putting it together and all of the work that goes into a real fresh Italian manicotti dinner or ravioli dinner. Just winning comes with a lot of different ingredients. I had a person say this to me one time, and I could not more vehemently disagree. But this person said something to me I'll never forget. They said to me, I just want an over 500 year. It's all I care about. No, it's not. You're the freaking Raiders. The movie Lion King, I love the movie. The cartoon, the original. And Simba, his dad has been killed, and he looks into the river and he sees his dad's reflection and he says to him, remember who you are. Raider Nation, your goal isn't to get above 500. It's Super Bowls. And so this franchise has got to get back to where it's not, oh, go to the playoffs, see it here 6 years later. It's got to get there on an upward trajectory. If they get to 9 wins this year, but there's progress, and so that they can get to a place where the playoffs is minimum every year. It's like the Steelers. Every year. Minimum acceptability is you have to be in the playoffs. That's where the Raiders should be. So just wanting once every 5 doesn't work like that. I just want to get there. No. You want to take that trajectory. So this year, if they're improving and the trajectory is only 9 wins and they don't make the playoffs, feel good about it. Because you have to define success in a Raiders franchise whose motto is just win, baby. And it's not just winning, it's improving. What if they face 5 teams going down the stretch, all of them decimated, all suck? Oh, but they ended with a 5-game win streak. Okay. But what we're talking about is, was there improvement? It's stepping back and not caring, because I don't want you not to care, you're fans. But it's stepping back with just enough realism to say, okay, our motto's just win. We got the 9 wins. That's winning. But man, I can see the trajectory. I can see it. Now, let me go back and make a point. Ashton Jeanty, and when he was in college, struggled a little bit with fumbling. That was the only knock on him coming out. Was there were some teams that had had Hampton higher because of Ashton's fumbling. That's fair. That's fair. And let's say he's coming down the stretch this year and he hasn't fumbled all year, or once or twice, and he fumbles on the last game and the Raiders lose. But they win 9 games and he runs for 1,500 yards. That's improved. Or maybe a Dante Thornton going across the middle gets lit up and gets tattooed and fumbles. And the Raiders lose that final game, but go with 9 wins. But you look at him and Bash and Jacoby, and everybody got better. Those are defining things. You can be a fan and live in Realville. It's not the fans' fault that they're mad over the last 20 years, because the franchise told you just win, and they did not. The Raiders franchise did not live up to their end of the deal. Wasn't because of lack of effort. The reality is they didn't live up to their end of the deal. They are now. They are now. They're there. Now you have to observe the process. Don't, after game 1 or game 3, this sucks, we're terrible. Some guy out there right now is already saying they suck. So after the 3rd game, I called it. No, you guessed. And you're not going to know after 3 games. There may be some guys this year that are really, really good. There may be some guys that are really, really bad. But you're looking for progress. Is the organization moving forward? I don't think anyone who's fair would say this isn't a better team today than they were a year ago, and certainly than where they ended the year. They've got the train moving. To me, that's how you define success in a Raiders just win baby franchise. Thank you for joining me. God bless you all.